I need a taller desk. Hey guys, what's up? In this brown box, I have a super weird motherboard. And in today's video, I'm gonna try to game on it. One of the newest mining motherboards that's been released from the great land of West Taiwan. And that is this. Yeah. This. This is an X79 5 graphics card mining motherboard. And it is freaking weird as hell. So what exactly is going on here? Well, first of all, yes, this is a mining board. And second of all, yes, I'm gonna game on it today. What is this? Well, let's break it down. On the board, we have 5 16x PCIe slots. And those slots both have the full fat 16x connector and the full bandwidth of a PCIe 3.0 16x slot. And the reason for that we'll go over in a little bit after we go over the rest of the board. We've got one DDR3 DIMM slot for the single 8 gigabytes of DDR3. This is ECC registered DDR3, as you can see by our extra RAM chip right there for error correction. Because this board actually uses a Xeon CPU from Intel. Now, the reason we only have one DIMM slot is because, well, simply put, for mining, you don't really need too much memory. Mining Ethereum especially uses GPU horsepower and GPU VRAM. It doesn't really use any RAM except for to run the usually pretty stock Linux-based OS and, you know, the CPUs, and for the CPU to store basic data. It really just doesn't need a lot of RAM, so we've got one stick of 8 gigs. This motherboard also has an mSATA slot for our mSATA SSD, which some people use, some people don't when it comes to mining. A lot of people just use a USB, but that's not what this video is about. Now, under this, as you can tell, very pinner passive heatsink, we've got the star of the show. Our LGA 2011 CPU socket and our Xeon CPU. Now, I believe this is a Xeon E5 2620V1, so it's nothing special, but that's just what came stock with the board. This mining motherboard serves a very specific purpose: to use graphics cards that other mining boards can't. And this requires a little bit of explanation. So, your standard mining motherboard looks like this, or this. There's two options. You've either got a very long motherboard with a standard consumer CPU socket, typically LGA 1151, and then you put something like a Intel Celeron or Pentium CPU, you just put that in there like that. And sometimes a SODIMM slot or a normal DIMM slot, but usually a SODIMM slot for one stick of DDR4. Now, on that board, you've got usually 8 16x PCIe slots. But the bandwidth of those slots is shared by the 16 to 20 PCIe lanes available to the CPU, and maybe 10 available to the chipset, whatever, these are random numbers. So let's say we have a total of 24 lanes to use. 8 16x graphics cards, each using 16 lanes, is not going to work. So the solution to that is that every graphics card usually gets about 1x PCIe lanes worth of bandwidth. And for normal GPUs and normal mining, that's usually fine. See, with the other type of mining motherboard, it's got a ton of 1x slots that are usually broken off into risers that just take a 1x and turn it into a 16x slot physically with a 1x interface. And again, for mining, that's fine, because all mining is sending a small packet of data to the GPU works through the math and sends it back. That's all the bandwidth needed. But here's the interesting part. For some graphics cards, mainly the RTX 3060, and some older cards like server GPUs, 1x PCIe worth of bandwidth won't work. For the 3060, I honestly don't know why, but for the 3060, it needs more than 1x. So these boards, completely off the table. And for older server cards like the S9170 from AMD, I hope you guys like these PNGs I'm using, it has 32 gigabytes of GDDR5. So, and the card won't work on a riser. On a 1X riser, that is. So that's where boards like this come in. This board uses a Xeon CPU, which has more PCIe lanes than your standard consumer Intel CPU. So each of these slots gets actually 8 or 16 PCIe lanes and can use that full bandwidth because the CPU and chipset are equipped to handle that throughput. So this board was made for RTX 3060s and older server GPUs and anything of the sort that needs more than a 1X interface for mining. So that's why it exists. So I thought, let's pair this very bad and probably let's just leave it at very bad for gaming Intel Xeon CPU, and I'm gonna pair that with a Dell RTX 3090. And we're gonna run some games and compare that to my 3900 XT and 3090 setup that is running over there. So let's hook this amazing motherboard up on a test bench and let's get to gaming. The shocking realization is that this corner is not ready for filming yet, so whoops. I realized the board has something really weird. It has a couple 6-pin PCI Express power connectors down here, right? At least I hope they're 6-pin PCIe power connectors. We'll find out in a minute. But it has 3 of them labeled power in and 3 of them labeled power out. So I've connected 3 6-pins from this weird Alienware power supply to our 3 power in connectors, hoping that it's not backwards, because that would really suck. And I'm gonna test it real quick on this desk with this with this GTX 1050 Ti before I try it with a 3090 or a Titan and completely rip a brand new 3090. So we'll just, if we're gonna kill a card, it better be this one. So I'm gonna connect all of our power connectors here, and then I'm gonna try this. So we have it set up on the motherboard box. Power supply is not plugged in yet, don't worry. Before we get started, since we don't have a 24-pin connector for our board, I'm gonna have to short the power supply to start and hope that this doesn't have some kind of weird 24-pin causing everything to explode. If something does explode, I have no recourse. Theoretically, when I plug this in, the whole thing should turn on. It made noise. I turned it off. Oh, that turned it back on. All right, let's get a Windows USB or something going. I'll try to boot something on here. It might not even support video out. I will get an OS that supports video out and we'll see what we can do. All right, to give myself the best chance, to give myself the best chance here, I've got 2 USBs. One of them has Windows on it. One of them has Hive OS on it. I don't know which one is which, but I'm gonna plug them both in and we'll see if it boots to one of the 2. And they both support video out. They both have some kind of GUI, so hopefully we get some kind of video out so we can proceed, and hopefully it's the Windows one, but I just want to see this board might not even support Windows 10. All right, and here we have the thickest Ethernet cable I could find on Amazon. To get some networking, just in case we are booted, to Hive, I can check on my phone, and it's over there, god damn it. That one has its activity light on, it's definitely booting something. Although, by the time it's booting something, I should have a display out, so this board may not support display out of any kind. Or guys, so I've discovered the board seems to work for what it's made for, but let's just try a new card right now. Because, simply put, our 1050 Ti appears to be non-functional at the exact second. So let's try something else. Got a Radeon R9 290X here. I'm gonna put, I still think it's this socket, honestly. I'm gonna put that there, get our display out going, and get some power going to that, and then we're gonna try this again. Known working card, I know nothing about that 1050 Ti. And a card that doesn't have that 0 fan mode, so hopefully we'll get an indication. All right, it's on, smells weird, but it's on. Let's see what it does. I really want a display out, because then we can move on, and this video might be 2 parts. I'll be honest, I don't think this board supports any of the graphics cards I have. Oh, it showed a signal for a second. Okay, so it's booted again, and our graphics card is clearly on, but it's showing that there's no graphics card installed, which is really unfortunate because it means that this just doesn't support, this is just not going to work. My power connectors for it are connected correctly, I believe. Well, I'll leave this on, and I'll come back to it. This is a fail.